Hello, everyone. Michael Jordan fans are the best. And today we have an amazing origin story for LeBron James. And I want to introduce the panel first before we get into it. First, we have our usual suspects, NMB Sports and Hoop God 23. How you guys doing today?
Doing
Oh
good.
man, great.
Awesome. And then our special guest, country music superstar and comedian Van Fry, just like Vince Van. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
So let's get straight into it. Um, you would talk to me, you would emailed me about an origin story with LeBron James and how you impacted the rise of LeBron James. And I thought you brought it up to me. I thought it was a good idea. Um, can you share with us your impact on the rise of LeBron James? What happened with the story how you're involved with him?
So, I will start this off by saying this was in the mid 90s, like 96.
Mhm.
I remember a pretty good amount of the 90s for somebody my age who was in middle school at the time. I was living in Yukon, Oklahoma, and we had just built this brand new middle school called Lakeview. And it was an odd situation. It was sixth, seventh, and eighth grade at the middle school. So they had now pulled together all the elementary school students, hadn't seen a bunch of them before, and now they're throwing us all in at sixth grade in this school, which had a large gymnasium that was sectioned off, like the sheets they would unroll and divide them up like it was a community center, just about. And at the end of the school days, we would sit on the bleachers waiting for buses or whoever come pick us up. Now, this was a tougher time in the 90s, not the frail, wimpy kids that we have today. It was almost more juvenile detention and daycare more than learning happening over here. There was fights all the time. This was before the Columbine thing made a zero tolerance fighting policy, so you pretty much had to know your way around, punching, kicking, whatever. There were some guys who did not want anybody sitting on the bleachers for some reason, and I didn't know this till went to sit down on the bleachers. This was some ways up, and they go and they kick me off the bleachers because kids at this time didn't care if they were going to kill somebody. There was another guy. Now, keep in mind here that I'm one of the taller kids in my class. I kind of tapped out in my whole life by about age 10. So I'm walking around pretty tall for uh, 11, 12, something like that. There was another guy who was actually taller than me, and he was very weird looking, if you saw him. Small head, but very gangly body, named JR. And what I do recall about JR was he was the only kid in the whole school who wore Air Jordans, and he had the new ones. They were the 12s, not the, which I prefer the Concords. Who doesn't, right? But the 12s are well looked upon. He jumped all the time from whatever, and he would routinely stand near the middle of the bleachers. This is like, I don't know, 15 feet high or something, and broad jump all the way to the baseline of like the basketball court below. And it looks super dangerous, but the teachers don't care because, like I said, it's almost juvenile detention.
Mhm.
As I'm getting pushed from here, I collide with JR. He falls bad. And I don't think I've ever actually said anything to him. Like, oh, hey, I'm sorry. I'm the one who got pushed. If anything, he kind of broke my fall from maybe death, maybe. But he hurts his leg or an ankle or something. Okay. Not too much is really thought about it. I think I then had to get on my bus or wherever I was going right after. So, not a whole lot of follow up from me here. Flash forward to about probably 2003. There is a slam dunk competition occurring in high school basketball. I'm a senior in high school. Everybody's talking about this guy, LeBron James. This is my first time hearing about him. He is currently trailing in the slam dunk competition to a guy named JR. Now, JR is jumping out of the arena with these dunks. And he's like 6'5". 6'5" is really a good height for a dunk competition. It makes it look like you still have to jump away instead of being like 6'10". Just phenomenal. Ducks out of the competition. Aggravates an old injury. I did not know until maybe sometime around lockdown that this was the same JR, because I had actually seen him around at college. I went to KU. JR went to KU for I think a year or two, and he was he had a promising basketball career in NCAA, and I think transferred to like New Mexico or New Mexico State, and even he was averaging like 28 points a game. I don't think he ever got any playing time in the pros or even went to the NBA. I'm really not sure. And it just sometime I think during lockdown, I was just like, whatever happened to this guy? And that's when I realized the J.R. Giddens from college was the JR from middle school, because it mentioned that he was from UConn, and I was like putting it all together. And then I'm like, oh, and the slam dunk competition, just everything. And I am an OG LeBron hater, and I didn't even know I was part of the like whole origin story. I hated LeBron because from the moment of that slam dunk competition, I'm like, well, he didn't really win. The other guy quit, and everybody's like, no, he won. I'm like, please. Then we're being told he's the chosen one. He's the king. I'm like, king of what? He hasn't put his feet in a court yet in the NBA, and he's already the king of it. Michael Jordan just retired, and this guy's the king. All that stuff, the James Brown commercial, that first commercial, is just like everything's just blowing smoke up his ass, making him be the biggest thing ever. So you can buy the hype. And I guess I didn't even know how far back it really goes for me and LeBron, I guess. So yeah, that is LeBron James' origin story. You know, I think that when I really process it all, we have to wonder when we think of somebody as like the greatest, especially in like a sport where there's going to be a lot of injuries, like running back. How does Emmitt Smith get all those yards? Because other guys got injured. So we look back at it and we think, oh, well, if Larry Bird played a few more years, or what, he didn't resurface his mom's patio or something. There was some story like that. Is LeBron James just lucky enough to have not gotten injured? Is that why he's able to get these like career stats? That it really seems that way, along with actually being the commissioner of the NBA, having all the rules bend to him, and now just pure laziness allowing him to have the Lakers. They're about to get swept. Are they playing tonight? I don't know. I think they're moving their game to actually ABC. I don't have cable right now, so I can't keep up with the NBA, which at a time where everybody's cutting cable has managed to make it so that it's incredibly difficult to watch any of their games unless you want to pay through the nose for some kind of service for them. Yeah, just everything's shit. It's kind of my fault, all because I went Rosa Parks and tried to sit down somewhere I wasn't supposed to.
So do you take full accountability for the rise of LeBron James? Is it all your fault, or how much percentage would you say? To me, it sounds like it's all your fault, but
I'm comfortable with it being all my fault at this point. He's one day younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like fate has brought this together in some way. But I think he was, already had Brian Windhorst chasing his skirt. So, I mean, if he had lost that slam dunk competition, I think in the least, LeBron James would have to have had a slam dunk competition victory in the NBA, because he could always go, oh, I won one. What difference does it make? He probably would have had to at least give it a shot in the NBA. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, JR may not have gotten like the same kind of hype. Carmelo had hype for a while too, but really he had like a one-dimensional game, just like all jump shot. But yeah, okay, go ahead and blame me. I take it.
Yeah. So no, and that's the thing that I also have some criticism with LeBron too, is that, and because he's known widely that as a great dunker, or has been at least in the past, and a lot of people still say that, that's one of my criticisms too of him, is why not do that? It's something. And I know off screen you were talking a little bit about that you haven't been following the modern NBA, but what you've heard of slash what you've seen of in comparison to the Michael Jordan, LeBron James transition of arguably being the face of the league, which I don't all the way believe, because I think guys get a lot or have gotten a lot more press time than LeBron has, particularly Kobe Bryant and Curry, for earning more merit towards it. However, particularly with the dunk contest and just the availability and the extracurricular stuff, how much does that irk you looking back at the old days of Michael Jordan playing and then LeBron James and just the newer age stuff of just not taking on those challenges for one reason or another, i.e. the dunk contest?
They have an easy out with ESPN saying, "Oh, well, they don't want to risk injury," and they always have like the players back over with the media. It's important for people on, it seems like almost YouTube alone, really, to actually say something against the LeBron James GOAT narrative, because you get no pushback to that at all in Fox Sports 1, ESPN, whichever, ABC, TNT. Nobody's really pushing back on it. Nobody's willing to expose him or speak up. I think part of it is that people are afraid to go up against Clutch Sports at this point. So you have to like kiss his ass right away. Hell, the first time I saw Mina Kimes on ESPN, the very first thing she said was, "LeBron James is the GOAT. Hi, I'm Mia Kimes." So that's the whole game they got going over there. He's been in the league with them from the word go. Hey, you tell them I'm the greatest. I'll stick around. I'll prove I'm the greatest. So he has been made the greatest like through propaganda almost entirely. He could jump. He had athleticism, but he doesn't necessarily possess the skill. And what we're seeing now is guys who actually have skill, but it doesn't translate into a watchable game so much. So you have a guy like the Joker, who is the MVP based on not making mistakes. It's almost like his whole game is not making mistakes, and yet that's good enough to beat the lazy Americans who are always flopping. We thought that it would be the Europeans with their soccer, as much as they flop in soccer, that they bring that to the game. But it's the Americans who realize how lazy they can get with this stuff, kick out their feet when shooting a three, like Harden. They're the guys who are really more responsible than even the Europeans. And that's what really surprises me. I think that if I was building a team right now, it'd almost be all European or from Cameroon or somewhere outside the United States, because those guys show effort and they would be willing to compete in a 3-point contest, a dunk contest, the All-Star game, which is now a travesty. It's just, everything is just a mess. And I'm not sure if it's going to change much when LeBron leaves the throne, I guess, because it doesn't seem to matter if the Lakers are in the hunt or not. ESPN is going to tell you it's LeBron's league, even though from what I've seen, it looked like it was Tim Duncan's, Kobe's, Curry's, and LeBron had like a timeshare.
Absolutely. Nick, do you have anything to say about what Vaughn has said? And also, do you have a question for him to follow up?
One thing I agree with him on, that my biggest pet peeve of LeBron is how everything is just so synthetic about the way he presents himself. Everything's a PR campaign. I've said this before, like everything feels planned, everything feels staged. Yeah. They gave him the talking points, never do this, do that. That's always been my biggest pet peeve of LeBron. But yeah, definitely. I now know where to put some of my anger towards LeBron. I'll be sure to troll you from now on and always bother you about allowing him to blow up. So, no, I mean it's good. Yeah, I mean I think we're all enjoying the Nuggets Lakers series right now. So, yeah, I don't have anything to say. Just
the best part of the summer is typically when LeBron James loses the finals, but I'll take a sweep in the first round too. But yeah. Look at this. We have the commission. LeBron James is the commissioner. This bald guy, I don't know what he is, like secretary. Okay, makes up this in-season tournament, right? Mm. So now LeBron can be like, I did something Jordan never did. Jordan, it wasn't. Yeah. No one even thought that needed to be done. Like, that's why there wasn't an in-season tournament already. It's about coming up with something to give LeBron. We got to give him another trophy some way. Maybe he doesn't play hard enough to get MVP. You know, he's got all that load management that he brought to the game. That's his legacy right there on the court, load management. And we have a play-in tournament, which is also a travesty. We got teams with eight, what is it, 10 seeds deep now have a shot at getting in the playoffs, where typically the 8 loses to the 1 anyway. Do we need to extend the playoffs, water it down anymore? God damn, everything's just horrible. I'm to blame totally.
And you
convinced
were one thing that also, if I remember, I think the first criticism of LeBron was not doing the dunk contest. I think that was truly the beginning of people starting to not, maybe turn on him a little bit. And obviously the decision just kicked it off, right? But him not doing the dunk contest,
turning point for most people that do hate him now. I hear so many people who say, I liked him at first. I thought Carmelo had a better rookie year. The numbers are very similar, and he had a better team. So, I mean, how is that not Carmelo's rookie of the year? But I think LeBron, would he have been invited to do the dunk competition? Kobe was not an all-star his first year, but he dunked as a rookie. So I'm assuming that the privilege would have been there for LeBron to grace us with his presence and awe-inspiring dunks, right?
100%.
Hey, can I also add that Denver and Cleveland they had the same identical record before they got drafted. Yet Melo took that team to the playoffs. Well, we know who missed the playoffs.
I think Carmelo, what disappoints me about him was he never showed the effort that even LeBron James gave. Like, he looks out of shape after his sophomore season or something. Yeah. He's like Charles Barkley without rebounding. So I really wish that Carmelo, who his Syracuse team beat my school, KU, to win the championship. And I was like, man, he can ball. I'm keeping more of an eye on him than LeBron James. Everybody's hyping up this high school kid. This guy proved he can do it in college. How come he's going number 3 in the draft? What's with this? So I was rooting more for Carmelo. It's just kind of a shame that he just kind of petered out. And a lot of these guys, they get the bag, and then it kind of doesn't matter. It's like, so what? There's some rings, whatever. I got a $100 million contract. I'm just going to sit courtside, have the best seats in the house, whatever. My leg hurts. There we go.
Hoopka, do you have anything? I know you just added something, but do you have something to add and or ask Vaughn? Do you have a question or anything?
Yeah. So outside of what we know on the surface about the whole Big 3 teaming up in Miami, like what other insight would you possibly have that could, I guess, shed some light on, him taking his talents to South Beach and that whole ordeal?
If I recall correctly, wasn't there like a donation? Like it's always there's some angle with LeBron James to make him look good here. So he's leaving Cleveland. He knows he's leaving Cleveland. He just hasn't announced it yet. But he wants to have a big going away party in the sense, but it doesn't go to like the Boys and Girls Club of America or something. Like it was almost like a fundraiser. It was kind of billed that way.
Something like that, yeah.
So that when he leaves, he still looks like the good guy. Like, I can't get on the side of somebody who's playing these angles like this so that they always come out winning, in a sense. Like, it looks bad to me. It looked bad to most people as it was going down, saying he's taking his talents to South Beach. I thought Dwayne Wade probably has the bigger role in all of that. It seems to me like it would be Dwayne Wade doing the recruiting. They're coming to him, and he's the one who has to put his game aside so that the king can show up and look bigger. And that seems to be an argument that goes wherever LeBron goes, he overrides the system, makes himself the coach, and everything revolves around him. Didn't he just say he was the sun or some nonsense? Like, the whole galaxy rotates around him, he's always on, or some garbage.
Did he?
I think so. Yeah. Maybe not the whole everything revolves around him, but we get the sense that it does. So
yeah, the metaphor applies. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always a bad look with him. And I know we didn't have social media in the 90s, but if we did, I think Michael Jordan would have been way more responsible with it. And I just like the fact that you can't find highlight reels to the same extent of Michael Jordan flopping. Like you can find, oh, well, maybe it's a flop, but for the most part, in the 90s, you kind of wanted to look like a man when you played basketball. And you didn't throw yourself around like you were flying like Superman or some nonsense. You wanted to look like, hey, at least you got shoved in the back and that's why you fell, or Bill Laimbeer raked you across the face or something. Like it would look substantial. Now there's less contact, but these guys are throwing themselves around and then spending minutes complaining to the referees instead of caring about what's actually happening with the ball. It's very hard to watch today's game and hard to get behind most of today's players. It's the pampered American ones that seem to be destroying it, really, from what I've seen.
I don't know if you've heard this too, but LeBron James, when asked, I believe it was something along the lines of, everything is going wrong with this series. I'm paraphrasing. And what do you think about it? He said that it's just basketball. So what do you think about him saying it's just basketball, essentially in the context of you're getting smoked by the Nuggets? Why, you're doing pretty good and your team isn't doing very good, or whatever the same old adage of why he can't win championships is. It's always the same thing. It's always in the middle of the season, LeBron needs more help. Let's go get some trades. And then when he loses in the playoffs, they just didn't figure it out. But it was asked and he said, it's just basketball. What do you think about that versus the players of yesteryear? I've seen a clip where Kobe Bryant was up 2-0 and they're asking, are you happy? And he said, no, the job's not finished, amongst other players. What do you think about that, kind of just to emphasize what you're talking about with kind of the very laissez-faire mentality of letting things just happen in an NBA? What do you think about him saying that?
Real quick, can I interject one thing about the Kobe thing? When the Mavs were up 3-0 on him, and he said something along the lines of like, call me crazy, but I still think we can win. When in 2011, when the Mavs won, they swept them. He was down 3-0, and that's what he said about being down 3-0. He said, call me crazy, but I think we can still win. So I just want to throw that in there as well.
I think that Kobe modeled his game after MJ, but he also modeled, if you look at the way he talks, like he sounds like MJ, or he has like an authoritative, deep voice that I don't know if he had to coach himself into that. I would almost think so. Like the idolizing of Michael kind of led to him maybe even subconsciously picking that up. I think that Kobe, his game and most things about him seem to be more like MJ. Otherwise, I'm just kind of filling space here because I forgot what the first question was because it went for like 3 minutes. This guy Eric's lighting me up in the comments saying this guy's a wannabe white boy basketball guy. And somebody else said they picked Kansas in 03, so I'm sorry you lost your bet. But what was the original question there?
No, the LeBron James saying it's just basketball.
Oh, it's just basketball, right? Yeah, I did see a clip of that. I wouldn't watch a whole press conference of him talking, but I felt bad for oh god, the guy with the unibrow, Anthony, right? Is it Davis? Yeah. I felt bad for him just having to sit there, and watch that. As our leader over here is going to say it's just basketball. I thought I was trying, but he's going to say it's just basketball because as it's winding down, he feels like his legacy's set and nothing cannot make him the GOAT at this point. I kind of would like to see LeBron James. It's just basketball himself to going to join Bronny in college because he should be eligible if I'm not mistaken. And whoever takes Bronny gets the king also. It should make for a good circus in the least. The guys back in the day, and it was across sports. Sports were a bigger deal when I was a kid than they are now. I think the lockdown did so much to accelerate the downfall of Western society. Everybody got so self-involved when there wasn't the other entertainment out there to do. An activity to go do would be a protest because there wasn't concerts or sporting events to go to. What was there available? let's loot and riot. Everybody got into TikTok. People, the kids, they make movies for teenagers. Teenagers don't like movies anymore because they don't star themselves. So they'd rather just work on their own TikTok trade. As such, I bet you they don't go to high school football, basketball games the same way they used to. Why would they root for somebody else that's not them? I think that everybody looked up to the basketball players when I was a kid. At least you wanted to hope that maybe someday you'd get that tall. And maybe as you found out you didn't, maybe your attention turned to something else, baseball, football, whatever. I don't think that the youth looks up to these guys, and they don't deserve to be looked up to. If you're not going to actually try in your work, in this case, basketball, and you just want to, oh, well, my legacy's sealed. I've got a shoe contract, even though I've never seen anyone wear LeBron's shoes. So I want to know how all of this money's being washed around. Yeah, it's just there's nothing to like about this guy. But everybody will make a case. Well, if you talk about what they do off the court, you got to give the edge to LeBron. I heard Skip Bayless say that yesterday. And I don't know how Skip Bayless, the only guy who is in the mainstream sports media that was willing to be critical of LeBron, will actually go as far to say that he's better off the court than MJ. I don't see it.
Yeah, I know for that. I think, yeah. So I think that whole argument is for some of the civil rights stuff, which I get. Like I'm not saying I think everything that he's done is bad or anything. I think some of it is overhyped for it. Like when building that school that, and I'm trying to keep it more basketball, but just as an example, they try to say that he's a, better off the court personality because he essentially proliferates his philanthropy across the media. And that's Michael Jordan didn't really do that. I mean, he would do stuff for the McDonald's or, the Make-A-Wish Foundation and all of that sort of stuff, but he wouldn't try to put it on the front page papers. So to say that, I think is laughable in a large extent because LeBron James is selling himself to be a family man, to be a philanthropist, all these sorts of things that Mike didn't necessarily do. He would get paid to sell himself. He wouldn't create this other image outside of getting money for it for branding purposes. And it's just kind of, I don't really, well, I do get it. It's just that I think that LeBron is a little more self-absorbed in respect to his image on a personal level than Mike was. Because Mike would go out and gamble and say, yeah, I like to gamble. He didn't care. He would just actually admit it. I don't think I've ever seen LeBron actually take a hit for something negative he did. He always seems to have an excuse for why it wasn't perfect.
Who gets to ask him tough questions? I never see it. If you want access to today's athletes, you have to kiss ass. Whereas the journalists back in the day they saw themselves as the boss, and they're going to make or break you in the paper. And now I recall I live in Kansas, spent a lot of time in Oklahoma City. They would get critical of the journalists over at the Oklahoman if they said something bad of Kevin Durant. You're going to drive him away from the Thunder by saying that he missed a layup or something like that. And then you'll hear on ESPN, First Take, PTI, whatever, that they would be like, oh, well, over here, New York City, Chicago, LA, you're allowed to be critical of the team because it's a big market, so you have more clout over here. Doesn't seem like that's even the case now. Now it is just we pamper the athletes. We want to stroke their ego. They don't try to block the ball. They don't want to get dunked on because they don't want to become a meme on Twitter or anything. So they just show no defense at all. And because like the whole league is lacking defense, everybody seems to be okay with it. They saw what they can get away with and they all agreed. And God, just everything makes me pissed. And
Nick,
that's my fault also. If I hadn't have fallen, people would have been playing defense now.
Yep. You're going to go down into the Naismith Hall of Fame as the most influential off the court impact to the NBA at large.
Oh, makes sense. Yeah.
Nick, do you have anything to say about what Vaughn was saying in a follow-up question?
Well, I mean, I kind of goes back to the whole everything about LeBron feels synthetic or astroturfed. And, part of it's his own doing. And part of it, I think we kind of mentioned just this different social media generation, right? Like everything has to be a front, everything has to be a PR campaign. So I halfway blame him because he goes along with it. And I halfway, I don't know what Michael would be doing in the social media age as a player. It'd be really interesting
This
to
guy
see
says
if
I
he
haven't worked
did.
out. I don't work out like I used to, but I still have something. And I'm 5'10". I don't play basketball. I'm white. What the hell? I'm getting lit up in the comments. Like I kind of expected some support, but no, these guys are really blaming me for everything.
We have a lot of hate watchers on this channel too. So
That's the way I like it. It's you
yeah,
can
nothing wrong with
control. I love being hated because you can make people hate you. You can't make people like you. LeBron
Right.
James has tried to make people like him. Is it working? I don't feel like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the
Go ahead,
about the Michael Jordan comparison, I wanted to chime in on that. Like MJ was kind of like he had the old school values. He didn't do stuff for the media and notoriety and things of that nature. And that's customarily how all those guys were brought up. Because not to digress, but Reggie White was being followed by a reporter and was like, hey, Reggie, can we film you out here giving back? He was like, I'll let you go if you don't film it, right? Dennis
I've
Rodman.
heard that story, yeah.
Right, Dennis Rodman. I didn't know every time they played Boston, he used to go to the Toys R Us and just buy up the store and let the kids go in there and get everything. But he said no cameras, like because those
Rodman
guys
also had quietly donated things. I was watching an episode of Jerry Springer, and he gave this kid like all like jerseys, all this stuff,
Yeah.
and had like an encouraging message. There was a man who was dragged to death. You recall that? And Rodman paid for his funeral. That was not about Rodman getting his name in the paper to look good or anything. And think about in the 90s, the biggest troublemaker in sports is Dennis Rodman because he kicked a cameraman. Like that's about it. I would take that over today's good athlete. Look at that ball kid over in Charlotte. He runs red lights at the end of every game. He's going to kill somebody. No one brings this up. It's insane. And that's almost a model citizen in the NBA now. Ridiculous.
Well, so something I wanted to add I think, and this is something that this was brought up earlier about the decision. For me, I was a huge LeBron fan until the decision. I've come more back around to him lately. But it's before I used to really just dislike him because I had empathy for the people of Cleveland to put on that hour special and just to say, hey, I'm leaving. Screw you guys. Even though this is my general hometown, you know what? Bye-bye, everybody. And then let me have a parade about it in the next couple of days. But my point of it is that to me, that was the greatest heel turn in NBA history in respect to the darling of the NBA. And then him going and just being this, saying, screw you, taking a dump. In a way, I think it'd be cool, or, in hindsight, if he embraced that. And I think he would have been accepted more by fandom as taking that role as the bad guy, but he doesn't want to be the bad guy.
No, and if you want LeBron James to appear in something, I watched his Space Jam recently, and it was atrocious. And the whole movie was about him being great, and you would think no one else played basketball until he came along. He could have very well invented the game if you were a kid watching that movie. I like the way you called that a heel turn because that kind of brought to mind. It's like that was LeBron James spray painting the back of Randy Savage right there, as he joins NWO Hollywood. I think that some people could have seen that. Well, Cleveland didn't give him his help, right? Because he asked for help all the time. I don't recall Michael Jordan asking for help or acting like it was anybody's fault but his. Like he had a chip on his shoulder. LeBron never got that chip. From as early of a time as anybody could get to him, called him the greatest ever without proving it. So he really never felt obligated to follow through with any of this. And it does sting extra to leave Cleveland, which is his home for his life. And I guess at some point he's going to have to sign like that 1-day contract to retire with the Cavaliers, like all that nonsense, just so he can have another press conference. Surely LeBron's not going to leave us until he gets his going away tour. Which it was Kobe maybe the first one to do that, to have the big going away tour.
Dirk had a pretty good one too, and Kobe.
Yeah.
I think it's gone on for a while. I know Kareem had one.
Well, Michael Jordan essentially did. I mean, they were showing every Wizards game on network television, and people were watching them. Everybody was saying goodbye to him last time he would play in their stadium. But it wasn't quite billed like the same way till maybe Kobe, and then we've seen other people kind of emulate it.
Yeah, my real quick, my story being a Mavs fan, we went to Jordan's last game in Dallas when he was a Wizard. And the only way you got in for free, which we did as kids, was you had to paint your body or do something crazy. And Cuban lets, like on the lower floor, the very last end of the circle, it's standing only, but he lets in, like, he gives free tickets. And essentially whoever's the craziest or most original or whatever, if there's not enough people, they'll let them in for free.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was in high school at the time, so like we were all about it, right? But we got to see Jordan's.
I mean, imagine these 12-year-olds presenting themselves to Mark Cuban, painted up.
But we got to see Jordan's last game in Dallas. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be great. I've never actually been to an NBA game. I would have loved to have gone to one when Jordan or Kobe was lighting it up, or even I like Tim Duncan. But today's guys, I don't know. Maybe I kind of root for the Thunder in part because my late grandparents really liked them. I am wearing a Durant jersey, but this is like, alternate rookie year sort of thing. Also, I find it funny that Seattle doesn't have a team. Kind of tells you there's problems with the NBA. The Clippers should relocate. It makes sense to me. Why share territory with the Lakers if you're always going to be like their bitch? So whatever.
Real fast. I got a super chat from Pierre. He's $2. Thank you very much, sir. He says, how I am, and did I get your emails? I did. I watched some of the Uncut Hoops video that you sent, and then one of the shorts. And then I watched some of the Gus Williams stuff too. But thank you for the super
Hoops,
chat.
That's the kid who goes, when it comes to and that's why he introduces every episode, right?
Yeah,
I really like him. He's one of my favorites. And I like the way that's all for now. See you next time. Like, there's like a weird cadence to it. I never want to see what he looks like. It won't live up to what I've built in my head.
Yeah. No. But and this is something too, what you were talking about, Vaughn, for me, is that now granted, this is probably just the nostalgic part of me talking, and I'm older at this point, but the personalities and just the marketability of some of these young kids just doesn't appeal to me at all. The Tim Duncan's just as a hard-nosed, quiet guy. Kobe Bryant, the same, but more vocal and expressive, let alone, Michael Jordan, other, bigger stars of the time. To me, you look at the guys nowadays, and like was said, not to just regurgitate the whole thing, but they're just it seems like they complain. They have low character and morals. A lot of them, it seems like, or it's actually shown in the media that they do a lot of the time. Outside, if you want to say that the gambling's low character and morals for Michael Jordan, but a lot of this media propagation just expands about how these guys aren't the same as guys from yesteryear. It seems like a lot of the attention is more off the court than on the court. And it seems like the way that it's sold is that they don't care about basketball, a lot of them. And even as much as you can find it evident within the All-Star game, but it's a joke. You know what I mean?
Well, I've noticed that today's athletes, they when it comes to the way they're marketed, I see weird things happen. There's an Anthony Edwards commercial for Sprite, and somebody's saying Anthony Edwards drinks Sprite. Anthony Edwards drinks Sprite. That was a Grant Hill ad. Do you guys remember that?
Okay.
That was a Grant Hill Sprite ad. Are we just going to repeat stuff? Who's going to get Little Penny? That's what I want to know. Because it's going to be somebody who's going to be kind of quiet and they don't talk a lot, so they need Chris Rock to be a spokesperson for them. That sort of thing. It'll just be repeat what we can, fire up the nostalgia for the people that can afford the tickets. They've priced the actual fans out of going to the games. I can't imagine my parents buying me tickets to an NBA game at today's prices, because I see kids now who have like more in their room or in their backpack than I had in my childhood, from a dollar value. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, the prices of things. We got to get the prices down in the NBA to get the kids involved and get them to go to the game. And then maybe if there's some kids around, maybe these guys will start trying to be role models. As much as I don't like the concept of the role model, maybe they actually need to feel like they're role models in order to get their shit together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you?
I
No,
was gonna say real quick. I did a video saying the NBA really is lacking personalities. I think the people overhate kind of Kyrie. I know Kyrie steps out of the bounds a little bit or whatever, but when he did that, he had like the smoke thing, and he was like clearing out bad juju at the Boston Celtics arena or whatever. Like, I just like, how do you not, as like an NBA fan, be like, we need more of this? Like, just weird guys, like guys who have a little bit of a screw loose but are funny. Like, they're not threatening. You know, like there's just no personality anymore in the NBA. I feel like everyone's got to be brand approved, right? You got to be safe. And it's just boring, you know. Like, it's just the way it is. Everyone wants to like each other.
I hate the jersey swap. Good God. Can you imagine Michael Jordan swapping jerseys? God, shit.
It's kind of a little much. Yeah, it's a little cringe now, but yeah.
Hoop God, I know that you were talking about today's prices in the NBA. Did you have anything to add on about what was being said about just the watchability and the availability to go to some of these games?
To be perfectly honest, there's not many teams that I particularly like to watch outside of the Denver Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors, of course, because of their style of play. I like the Mavericks because I'm a Luka guy and a Kyrie. And I'm teetering with Boston because sometimes I can watch them, sometimes I can't. But it's like outside of those teams, and I may be missing a few, but the rest of them literally play the same. I mean, you look back from the
what do you think about OKC? I'm kind of getting back into them.
I was gonna say OKC is fun to watch.
They don't shoot the three as much as everybody else is trying to emulate the Warriors. They kind of realize that maybe it's a little bit more about facilitating and trying to get a better look, try to get something a little closer. I think that they're actually fun.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's what we've talked about in the past. Like, they're trying to turn the game into outside in versus the most successful system has always been inside out, because you have to have that inside game first to open up the game for the outside. And that's why I like the Nuggets, because they essentially play that style. They start with Jokic, they work their way in the middle, and they incrementally work their way out in the perimeter. Now, you're going to have those games where Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, KCP, they're going to get hot. You got to ride the hot hand. But however, their success starts with Jokic, and it ultimately starts inside out. And like the Lakers, when I see them play without LeBron, they move the ball. They have success. He comes in, stagnates the offense. He got to get his stats. Instead of playing defense, he finger points, and they lose.
Yeah, because they lose because they weren't getting the calls. Didn't you hear LeBron? That's why they lost. It has nothing to do with him basically getting waived to shoot a three early. God, just somebody else's fault, right?
Differential. He's still crying for free throws. Let this sink in.
The Lakers get so many more calls, and they still have to have a play-in tournament to get into the playoffs. How do you explain that other than you guys are being carried by the refs? Jesus, are we kind of like in agreement that I guess Jokic is MVP again? Just it kind of seems like it's almost a done deal, right? Like, you don't really hear the talk about it being a race, right?
No, I think he should be. I think they'll give it to him again. I think they didn't want to give it to him because then he would have matched Larry Bird's and I believe Wilt Chamberlain's 3 in a row record, which I think there might be somebody else in there that's done it. But I think
Bill probably would have,
yeah. But the whole aspect of it is that I don't think they wanted to anoint him that yet, because he is one of those guys that aren't sellable, or I don't say aren't sellable, but are not as sellable as other guys. Like Joel Embiid is more of a sellable guy, in my opinion, because he'll go on camera and say weird things like Nick was alluding to. And he's more entertaining. And Jokic, after he wins the NBA championship, says, I want to go back to Serbia and ride horses. Nobody wants to hear that.
I kind of liked that because that's weird, but it's different than what you'd hear out of any American guy that had just won, right? Like you get the I want to go to Disneyland or Disney World, okay, whatever. Go do the Nike ad. Something there could be more done to make Jokic marketable. He seems like a kind of a low key, kind of fun guy. Like there could be a way to work that personality. They don't seem inclined to want to exploit that. Instead, it is LeBron's league still. I have no idea why, but even when it was clearly Curry's league, the media will tell you otherwise. No, Curry was just leasing it or some shit.
Well, Pizza Time brought up the commercial, the Despicable Me commercial. That was funny.
Yeah, we could get more of that, right? Like, why not?
Yeah, that story is very true for Dirk too. He just never got marketed. I mean, he had one cool commercial with like the bald eagle when they were doing like the animal Nike commercials. I don't know if you remember those in like the 2000s. But yeah, Dirk's the same. He just not marketable, right? I don't know what it is, but if you see him or watch him off the court, he's very funny. He's very lighthearted. He's always
let's go
joking
home,
with
shut
guys,
it down.
you know?
Yeah, like
yeah.
It's kind of a shame that he has to retire to get to his catchphrase going, right? Like I feel like that's a lack of the marketing people approaching these guys and trying to make something of it.
It's because it's not hard to make guys likable, really. You know, a little bit of self humility and a little bit of comedy goes a long way. You know.
Yeah.
So Eric, I just wanted to announce this. Eric says Vaughn sounds like a really jealous ex-girlfriend. I don't know if you saw the beginning of this, but he's solely responsible for the rise of LeBron James. He has a lot of regret. That's probably why you think that.
Y'all should be thanking him.
Yeah,
this guy a LeBrick stan or some shit. Like what's if he is a fan of LeBron, he should be thanking me.
Yeah. What do you see for the future after LeBron James will retire, most likely within the next couple of years? What do you see for the future of the NBA? Do you think LeBron James is a positive for the NBA in respect to the culture of it, or do you think once he leaves, you think it's going to get better or worse?
LeBron James, without question, has been a detriment to the league. I have said that his legacy on the game is load management. He has left the league whenever he leaves it in a much worse state than any other face of the league before him. I think that at this point, they have gone so far in courting outside of the US, China, for instance. It is very hard to get the Americans back to being interested in their own league when so much lip service is being paid elsewhere. As such, I would not be surprised if there was some kind of expansion in a way that the NFL looks to be trying to test playing in Europe so many games and eventually probably put some teams like in London, Berlin, some Paris. It could very well happen. Would the NBA go as far as to make such an agreement that there would be Chinese NBA teams have say there it could just simply be the American conference and then Asian conference, and then they get into a finals. In the long term, I think that's actually where they're comfortable with going, is to actually go further into China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on a sidebar to what you're saying, I've been, not to talk about myself too much, but I've been all places in the world, and I've asked people about the LeBron James and the Michael Jordan for quote unquote casual fans. More people know of Michael Jordan than LeBron James. Not to say they don't know who LeBron James is, but in general speaking, when asking who's the greatest of all time or this, that, or the other thing, they say Michael Jordan. So in Europe and Asia and Polynesia, that's the answer I get. I haven't been to Africa or South America, so I don't know. But what they say. But that's, in respect to the proliferation of the NBA with how, crediting some of that to LeBron James into China and then trying to expand to a new audience in China and India and other places. then the thing is with the teams for me is it's just the travel time, because you're going to have to fly, depending on where you are, upwards of 20 hours to get there. So I don't know if they're going to put teams in China, but yeah.
Well, that's why you'd have to have like a full conference over there, or a division or something, in order to keep those teams playing each other for a period of time, and then eventually they'll have their 2 months away from China to play in the U.S. Like they'd find some way to do it. I don't doubt their passion to expand the game in that way. What they could really do to help is make the regular season amount to something. Like whittle it down to 50 games instead of 82. LeBron James would actually love that, because no one would be able to catch up with him on those lifetime stats that make him the GOAT.
I think there are people that will, and I think it's going to come sooner than later, just with the expansion of the statistics. I don't think it's going to be done for a while. Don't get me wrong, but records are meant to be broken. So the 40,000 plus, that whatever he's going to end with. I mean, there's guys like Luka who doesn't really rely on his athleticism, but it's also the will to stay in that long. So, but I get your point, is that when you're selling that, to me, and I did a video about this, how they sell LeBron as the 40,000 points to longevity, and then getting over the 73-9 Warriors team, which is the best team of all time, which is funny. They had the best regular season record of all time. That's a fact.
But if you watch the playoffs, they were gassed. Like the Thunder took everything, all the wind out of their sail. I mean, it was every inch of their breath to get past the Thunder.
But a lot of people will try and correlate the next year's team and the team after that with Kevin Durant as the greatest team of all time. But Kevin Durant wasn't on the 73-9 team. They kind of just try to lump it all in together, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Warriors game, though. I like the fact that in a way that they've facilitated this team that they built. They didn't go hunting for people except for Kevin Durant. But yeah, I wouldn't say that adding Dennis Rodman to the Bulls was, that big get. A lot of people thought that, they get him relatively cheap or something. Like they kind of thought he was past his prime anyways. What's it matter? It's not adding an all-star or superstar to your team. The Warriors, Curry has had a bigger impact on the game than LeBron, making everybody shoot threes now. And every kid can go out and shoot some threes. They can't all dunk like LeBron James can. So everybody wants to emulate Curry's game, really.
Real fast, Adidas 20 is here. He's a member of the channel, and he says, "What's up?" I don't know if you just tuned in, Adidas, but we have Vaughn here, who is single-handedly responsible for the rise of LeBron James. He's also a country music star and world-renowned genius.
And the decay of Western society. I'm responsible for that also.
And then Adidas has gone and super chatted me $5. Thank you very much, sir. And again, for being a member of the channel. Speaking of stats, LBJ is first in missed shots and turnovers.
Something about stats I want to say. Luka catching up with LeBron, it could happen, but at what age did he enter the league? Like, because some of these European guys are getting here earlier than the Americans can. Am I right?
Yeah, he was like 19, 20.
Yeah, but if they don't get here, fresh at 18, it's kind of tough to say. But will he have the drive, and also will he go uninjured? There's a lot of questions there. Also, it is way easier to score in a league that just totally shuns defense. I think that's part of why you have to look at Jokic as the MVP, because we can't just take scoring into account. If you're just looking at scoring, you got the Mavs. They made the playoffs. They're not looking that bad. Wouldn't Luka be the clear MVP just based on the scoring alone? In the old days, when it was tougher for anybody to get to the 30-point per game threshold, it'd be a slam dunk. But nowadays, it's really like an eye test. Like there's things that are happening on the court with the Joker that don't fully translate into what we'd consider stats. And they try to make up these advanced analytics, and a lot of it favors him. And maybe that's the answer, but you just kind of have to go with what you see during the games.
Yeah. Nick, do you have something to say about that? I know you're a big advanced stats guy.
No, I mean, the main argument I guess I would make for just on the topic of Luka, I think it's the highest output season of all time, rebounds, points, and assists. His defense has been pretty good this year. He's got a pretty good like one-on-one defensive stat line, whatever that is, or however they calculate that. He's pretty good in the stocks, the new category stocks. His team has been much more injured than Jokic this year. But I would like to get Luka the MVP, but they're probably going to give it to Jokic. The team record, I think, is what's going to get him over the hump. So,
Well, why can't
but yeah, just my
SGA
thought on
really
that.
be in the conversation? If his team, if he is the leader, the best player on the number one team in the toughest conference, how come I don't hear the media trying to crown SGA? What's with that?
Just probably the overall like assists and rebounds aren't there. The stats just aren't quite. You know, if the stats are close, then it probably goes to record. But I just don't think SGA has the stats that when you put him up against Luka and Jokic, it's not quite the same. That's what they would say, right? But that's probably why.
Hoop God, do you have any input you want to add? We haven't heard from you in a while. Or you may still be on that phone call that you were talking about. Real fast is just a kind of quick commercial break. I'm going to be doing a debate with T Perfect, who is in the chat. I don't have the overlay on. I think he's on NMB Sports page. But he's saying he's putting some comments in there. But if you want to check the debate out, it'll be going on tonight, midnight Eastern Standard Time, or 9 Pacific time for the people that are interested in that. Or you could watch it back later. It'll be LeBron James argued by T Perfect versus me arguing Magic Johnson as the greatest player of all time. Anyway.
But I want to answer King John here. I don't actually watch today's game. I watch Uncut Hoops, and I kind of have a good laugh at what's happening there. And I try to look around for other people who are actually don't have their head up their ass and can see that LeBron's a fraud, and are trying as they can to point it out. But otherwise, I see clips of the games, and I'm not really sure if I've seen a full game in a very long time.
So Vaughn, and this is, I guess, for everybody, but Vaughn, is there a player that is in the league right now or up and coming that you actually like watching? I know you've mentioned some guys, but who do you think is going to take the mantle from LeBron after he leaves as being the face of the league, quote unquote?
We may not even have seen the guy yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be a guy who's in high school right now. I don't know. I don't see a guy that the media is behind in the way that they're trying to make the guy that they're going to will into being the new king. I see a lot of talk for Edwards. I don't think SGA has the game for it, or at least from what I've seen, he doesn't have the personality to be boisterous enough to do it. The ball kids, they don't quite have the game, and maybe even the wrong kind of personality. And it should, I guess, the de facto leader right now is the Joker, but I'm not sure for how much longer he would be at the top. So as the next guy who's really controlling the league, it may be somebody we haven't seen yet. Unless you guys have somebody in mind, maybe somebody with the Celtics, or Wemby, I'm not sure about. Legs that long don't last. There's a reason why the good centers like top out at 7'2".
Yeah, I think Edwards makes the most sense right now. And I say that as a Luka fan, I just think he probably has to be American or speak really good English. I know that sounds silly, but just on a broad scale, right? If America's your main demographic, correct? I think he probably has to be American. That's probably a big leg up on people like Jokic and Luka, who, as much as people may like them, there is still this thing of like, he's from another country kind of thing. It's a lot of people, I think, just on an instinctual level would like to see American take over. He's got to be young. He's got to be exciting. Edwards seems to check those boxes. Can they market him though and boost him up to LeBron's level?
Well, he's
I don't
getting a
know
little
about
penny
that.
next year, so that'll be the rocket ship right there when Chris Rock comes out of retirement and they dust off a little Edwards or something, or they'll probably
Yeah.
actually put him in an ad with Tom Cruise because Anthony Edwards played Goose in Top Gun, so they'll have to sacrifice him to the canopy of the F-14, and that'll be
Yeah.
a big hit.
I don't know enough about Edwards off the court. Like I haven't heard him speak enough outside of like basketball to get a feel of what his marketability may be, but it seems like he's the guy they're at least trying to maybe fill in the shoes a little bit. So I'd probably put my money on Edwards. He seems to check most of the boxes.
Did anyone here ever believe in Zion Williamson? Because I didn't. I didn't think he had the body to have longevity in the league. He's built more like a football player, and it's just not the body that works. He's a bigger version of Larry Johnson in a way. He's going to be prone to break down. I saw it all coming ahead of time. His shoes couldn't even handle him, and now you have this.
The thing about Zion too is he plays a very horizontal game. Like he jags, he cuts real hard. Even for Barkley was much more of a either post you up or kind of straight line guy. A lot of that zigzagging on a guy built like that, it just seems like a recipe for disaster. It's like a fullback trying to run and dodge like a wide receiver. It's just not what he's built to do. The body just can only handle so much.
So for me, they always seem to sell, and I get why they do it, but often it seems like every other year they go and say this is the next generational talent, and they're trying to just sell the NBA and the new guys. And for me, for one of the more recent guys, I do like Wemby, and for taking it forward as of right now. Granted, he's really young, but some of the stuff that he says on TV is really clean cut. And I'm not saying that's everyone's cup of tea, but I think for the league to be clean, and he doesn't seem to complain like in comparison to LeBron, who has that clean cut image. He says, I don't go out and party. I don't do this. I don't do that. I just play basketball. Why would I make millions of dollars? Why am I going to screw that up instead of just trying to be the best player I could be? But I saw a critique that he didn't mention women. So, they're always good for getting your head away from stuff. However, for the Zion, no, I thought he was going to get injured, and he's been injured a myriad of times. And he's exciting to watch when he's on the court, but at the same time, he's the Charles Barkley reference. He eats like Charles Barkley, or at least it looks that way. I mean, I know he's gotten a little skinnier over time, but
Charles could never have weighed he's weighing like 280 right now as a player. Like, what was Charles Barkley weighing in at? Like, everybody was actually skinnier way back when. It wasn't uncommon for a guy to just be 200 pounds in the NBA in the 90s and the 80s and stuff.
They've got Barkley's playing weight roughly like around 250, and he was 6'6". So
yeah,
what's Zion? Isn't he
6'6", 280? I think I saw 284 actually. But I think he's 6'6".
Yeah, so that's a big difference.
That's huge. And like I said, he's coming in the league, and I'm seeing Larry Johnson. He's got 50 pounds on Larry Johnson.
Yeah,
who looked like a big guy and not really the shape of a basketball player at the time. When guys could be 190 to 200, 210. I would like to see Wemby be the next face, but just the history of injuries hitting these guys that are a tower like that, it just doesn't bode well for him, for me. Like, it would be very difficult to mortgage your house and bet on Wemby at this point, I would say. He seems like a good guy. He was able to do what few men were able to do when I was his age, and that is decline Britney Spears. So I have to give him his flowers for that. Yeah, she was definitely chasing him. Whereas, isn't Zion hooking up with some prostitute or something? Like, there's all these hoes. Yeah, I don't. If you had that much money, wouldn't you want somebody that wasn't of that lifestyle? Like, maybe I'm not understanding this. Maybe I'm an old head for thinking like that, right?
They're all about those Instagram baddies, man.
Madonna
Wemby-
still chases young men.
Yeah, I mean, Wemby doesn't shoot the three as good as I think he was told, as well as we were told he would. Chet Holmgren shoots the three better, but I guess what's the rookie of the year decision? Is it just assumed to be Wemby, even though his team's garbage?
Wemby's gonna get it, I bet.
He has the stats, I guess, but if your team's that bad, is it deserved?
That's the argument, and I think it matters if you have somebody equivalent. You could say that Chet Holmgren had a close season, but I think that Wemby, if you add it all up, still has over 10 points in total with everything. I think it's more like 15 with the points, assists, blocks, rebounds, steals, all that sort of stuff. So I think he has a significant better statistical season, and I think that he arguably. And this is something I read. I don't know how true it is, but when Wemby's on the court, that the Spurs have the 5th best defense in the league. Now, granted, in totality, they don't have a very good defense, but he was only playing about 30 minutes a night, which is essentially 2/3 of the game. So, or 3/5.
He leads the league in blocks, so that effectively does help their defense. I mean, there isn't much case against it, I guess. I mean, it's a simple argument, I suppose.
Yeah, I think rookies also
blocked.
Rookies get a big pass on their team's record too, especially considering Wemby is obviously the best player on his team, and Chet, he's got a lot of good talent around him. He's got another MVP candidate on his team, so I think rookies probably go straight more on stats for Rookie of the Year compared to looking at the team record. Unless that rookie, if Chet Holmgren was the best player on his team, then obviously he probably would get Rookie of the Year. But I think Wemby's stats.
Do you recall Wemby being marketed to the public as the biggest prospect since LeBron James? And then, what does Zion think of this? Because that was the same phrase I was hearing for him, that he was the biggest prospect since LeBron James, and how quickly they've changed that.
Ben Simmons is the next LeBron James. It's. Yeah,
it's almost every year, isn't it? God, Ben Simmons. Look, I'm going to say this. More people need to be hearing it. He needs to join the WNBA. I've seen pictures of him in college. He looked kind of cute. He's cuter than Brittany Griner. Okay, if that is his territory. Can you imagine? Just the turnaround. The media would be totally behind it. He doesn't even have to cut anything off. He just identifies as a woman for a little bit and just becomes the face of the WNBA, just shits all over Caitlin Clark. That's where he belongs. There'll be no pressure environment, totally for him.
Yeah, speaking of the next up, one thing I will give LeBron credit for is considering all the hype he had, and we're calling him the next Jordan. He's done a very good job living up to the hype. Coming out of high school, if you would have said this is what he did as a career, you'd probably say, yeah, that's probably worth it. The hype was in the realm of what it was. So the next guy, the Wemby hype, I think has been a little over what was deserving compared to LeBron. Just my opinion. I think physically on paper, Wemby is, metrics look better. But seeing LeBron play in high school, he looked like a grown man. I do remember just being like, there's no way this is a high school kid if you remember him coming out, right? And I just think he was NBA
think that
ready.
Wemby had more hype than LeBron? Because I don't think anyone's had more hype than LeBron.
I don't think he did, but that was people were arguing or talking about that for a while, about is this hype comparable to LeBron, or they're comparing him to LeBron. I remember the hype around LeBron. It was unreal, right? It was unlike anything I had ever seen up to that point, and still have ever seen. I don't think the Wemby hype was the same, but they were having that conversation, right? Of should this guy be hyped up as much as LeBron?
Well, LeBron comes around at the perfect time. The face of the league is retiring again, and we now have the capability to be putting these high school games on TV for everybody to watch. Hell, even while kids are in high school, they put some of these games on TV. I'm not sure if a prior era could have had a guy hyped to that extent in a way.
True.
But I'm assuming Kareem was well hyped. Wilt Chamberlain had to be well hyped. It's probably just very hard for us to place it without any kind of reference points and just the way the media was different back then. How do you hype somebody in a newspaper? Unless you're looking at the newspaper, I guess it's not the same as having Wimby shoved down your face nowadays.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that there were these amazing prospects like the guys that you mentioned. Even Michael Jordan, even though he didn't go number 1 overall, he was still the most popular college player. But he was drafted, Hakeem was picked ahead of him, and same with Sam Bowie. But even some of these old Chicago Tribune papers, I made it a point to try to read what was thought of at the time about Michael Jordan, just to get a better perspective of the time, since I wasn't alive in the early to mid 1980s, particularly as an adult. So I read a lot of those papers, but I agree with the point is that the media just the game wasn't nearly as popular as it is today. And Michael Jordan's responsible for that largely. And then at least in respect to having the LeBron hype happen. But yeah, Kareem, obviously super hyped, just being very winning within his high school and college years. And then even when he hit the NBA, just, running on all cylinders immediately and keeping up with Wilt Chamberlain. Yeah, absolutely. There were guys that were hyped, but I think the point of it that's being made is that no, not to the same level, not nearly in respect to the proliferation. But saying that these guys were going to be all-time greats, yeah, absolutely, it's happened.
I think the NBA needs you to think that the next great is, around the corner.
Yeah,
it's more a star-driven league than NFL, where nothing's bigger than the shield. They'll go and put Tom Brady in. They didn't lock him up in prison, but they kicked him out of some games. They would suspend the guy that would be the LeBron for their league. So we're always supposed to think that somebody is around the corner. Somebody has to be hyped when it comes to the NBA.
And that's I know that you're fairly new to seeing some of my stuff, but that's one of my big arguments is that a lot of NBA fans, especially modern NBA fans, even though they don't want to admit it, the latest is the greatest. That's their opinion. And I'm not saying that there's no bearing to that. However, when you look at what guys of the past did in their time and space, to say that and I use the analogy, was Rome not as great of as an empire as some of these more modern empires because they didn't have airports? It doesn't make any sense. Or are Spartans not some of the greatest warriors of all time because they didn't have rifles? Or are Southern militiamen better warriors because they have guns versus Spartans? It does, have some kind of perspective on when you talk about greatness. Greatness transcends time. It doesn't mean that they particularly could do one thing better than somebody else because it was instituted into a certain industry, whatever industry that is. That doesn't mean that they weren't nearly as great or productive or better than their contemporaries during when they were. So to me, that's the one thing that I think a lot of people try to say, well, this guy was a better, essentially, I'm being hyperbolic because people don't say this directly. This guy carried the ball better. He was able to dribble up to his shoulders and then, travel, take 5 steps and do a layup better than, I don't know, Bob Cousy, when you can only dribble the ball directly like this, or it's going to be a carry if you even do a crossover. So, things like that, when they say, oh, well, Bob Cousy can dribble. No, he just dribbled the way that they accounted for how you're supposed to dribble back then. For that analogy, amongst others. So that's something that, and then there's going to be a lot of modern NBA fans because somebody's is going to do better than LeBron or close or equally as good as LeBron or at least arguably as good as LeBron in the future. And a lot of guys are going to say that that guy was better, even though if you look at how they affected the league, their influence, and then just what they did in comparison to their contemporaries, it might not line up, but there's going to be a horde of people saying the next guy is going to be better than LeBron.
But is that argument ever going to come up? Because it could be the next guy's better than Michael Jordan, and they leave LeBron out of the conversation. Because the only people putting LeBron in the conversation seem to be ESPN, just all the media stalwarts. People that seem to have liked the game or still like the game seem to think it's pretty clear that MJ's better. And I think LeBron's kind of like a fringe top 10 guy. And the more I think about it, the more guys I'm adding to the list better. Jokic is now better than LeBron James. I know they're not meeting at the same time in the careers, but he's owning him like a small child. So it's hard to say that Jokic is not above him for me, at least. And is there going to be more names added to that to when the next face of the league is going to be compared to Jordan instead of LeBron?
No, and I agree. They might just leave LeBron out of it. It remains to be seen. He's still playing. It depends on how much they want to talk about him in the media. They've definitely talked about Michael Jordan for the last 20 years in the media every day. So are they going to continue to do that with LeBron when he stops playing? To your point, yeah, it remains to be seen, because they're trying to say that he's in the GOAT conversation, but that we have to see what people talk about in the future, particularly when he stops playing. Because largely people will talk about in the comments, some of my haters, well, you talk about LeBron James a lot. Well, it's because he's compared with Michael Jordan a lot, and he's playing in the modern NBA. It's more material to talk about. I don't think it's close, honestly.
I think that there is some skin in the game for ESPN to hype up LeBron James. The guy who is currently producing the highlights, or they would like to hope, is the guy they're going to be talking about. You can't make money showing Michael Jordan highlights from, that happened 30 years ago. It doesn't make sense. So they have to show what's new, and they have to hype up the current product. And these teams, well, actually, it seems like the whole league, we're about to see, don't they have like a new TV contract coming? And it looks like Amazon might be trying to put games on instead, which I think is a win for the fans. I think more people might actually have access to watching the games, especially if they're out of market, on Amazon Prime Video versus having to get like the league pass at the prices they want for that. All the contracts seem to revolve around what they can get for a TV deal. If the TV ratings are down, which they are, does the league really have anything to offer? Can they be demanding more money? Somebody like ESPN has to show live sports, or they become Sports Illustrated. Sports adjacent but not needed. If ESPN doesn't have games from a major a league, they really don't even have NFL games at this point. They
just become YouTube.
They put in the Monday night games over on ABC. People don't watch First Take. I know they damn sure don't watch Undisputed now that Shannon left. Everybody was actually watching that on YouTube. And that's a very expensive way to make a YouTube channel when you're paying guys $20 million a year to host it. I think ESPN kind of needs the NBA more than the NBA needs them, as weird as that is. But yeah, we could see some big changes here, depending on if the NBA has to eat some crow with this contract.
Absolutely. Nick, do you have anything to add on or
yeah. We're talking about kind of hyping things up and like who's the next, and they're always kind of looking to them. And one thing I think is like the big sticking point for old heads versus more modern fans, right, is this premium on potential, right? Jordan mentioned it when he took over the Hornets, how the premium on what you hope a guy will be has just absolutely skyrocketed in the last 20 years, right? You're buying the ceiling right out at the gate, hoping that he hits it, instead of seeing if a guy can at least prove it for the first 2 or 3 years, and then he gets the big contract, right? And I think that is one of the way it'll be framed, right, is that the guys these days aren't earning it. They're coming out the gate and they're just making life like a family tree altering money, right? Like it's absolutely insane. And more power to them, right? I'm all for guys getting paid as much as they can, right? I don't hate the hustle, but this premium on potential, I think, is like, people won't frame it that way, but I think that is like this, we're done with the 90s and LeBron's better than Jordan. I think a lot of the old heads and the new age fans, it's this premium on potential that is like, I think is where people are kind of talking past each other, how they feel guys in the 90s and previous, like they earned it, or they didn't get paid so much out the gate. And guys these days are just getting hyped as the next big thing. And they're making millions, maybe if not possibly dozens or hundreds of millions before they even really finish a year or two, right? And I just wanted to throw that. I think another way of framing that, this what y'all are talking about with the hype, and the next thing is just the premium on potential is just exponential compared to the late 90s or early 2000s, right? So I think that would be another way I would frame that conversation too.
I do not fault MJ for how he managed the Bobcats, Hornets. It's very hard to expect the players now to have the same drive that he did. In fact, I would say that if a kid showed uh, the ambition that he had and the determination, even the thing that sort of made him a habitual gambler, it'd be treated with Ritalin and he'd be diagnosed with something and he wouldn't become a great basketball player because we're kind of taking that attitude like out of society. That's toxic masculinity over there to be to want to be great instead of just go along, get the bag, I guess. If today's guys are getting paid the way they are, like Ben Simmons, I don't think wants to play basketball, and he has what $200 million reasons not to. I guess like they've essentially they have made him like a case study for what happens when you overpay these guys based on potential of what you think might happen.
Absolutely. Hoop God, are you there? Or are you still on that phone call?
Phone call it is, I guess, huh?
It must be the phone call of a lifetime. Anyway.
You got the call from LeBron. Shut it down.
No, it's J.R. Giddens.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So I know that you're kind of alluding to it, but do you ever play pickup basketball, or did you ever play in school at all, or you just been a fan?
No, I played it wasn't the middle school team of 7th grade, but there was like and it wasn't AAU, but some kind of little league of sort around town. I played some basketball, and I had like an impressive stat line. I was 50% field goal shooting on the year. On the 4 shots I took, I made 2, and I didn't commit a single foul all season, and no one scored on me. How that came to be, just use your imagination and assume I was batting shots down. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a stat line of the century. RC's talking about the phone call of the century.
Yeah.
50% for a career total, 0 points scored against. Let's not talk about the minutes, but
the team did good. Yeah. But we had 2 guys that we just fed the ball and they would get their 20, and that was pretty much the way it worked. But yeah, I mean, I watched more basketball than I certainly played it, and it's been ages since I've tried shooting around. I do some like I hate the term influencer, but I do some influencer stuff with Amazon. So I took a basketball out and we're throwing it around and stuff, dunk on like the 7-foot basket or something, and a shitload of people bought the basketball because of my video. I have no idea what sold them on that, but good basketball from Wilson. So
nice. Yeah, for the people that don't know, I think this is a good time since you mentioned it. If you want to talk about some of the stuff that you are a part of, I know you've got multiple YouTube channels amongst other things. If you want to talk about some of the big things or projects you got going on right now,
I was hoping mostly to double my listenership on my podcast, try to get up to 4 people with this live stream. So I do a podcast each Friday with my mom. It's called Even My Mom Has a Podcast. We just sit, say what she's been up to this week, go through the news of the week, interesting tidbits. I had her react to the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer yesterday, so we keep it kind of light. She was a children's librarian, so we kind of like, that's the safe kind of humor that we go with over there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then you had the basketball. Are there any sort of links for any sort of do you have any sort of products you're promoting that you want to talk about that maybe people go to your page and?
Oh, just all sorts of stuff. I get a lot of sales on some male skincare stuff that actually Tony Gonzalez is like they call him like the chief wellness coordinator or something. Like, oh, I get it, chief. Okay, sure. But yeah, I put some, I've started cleaning my face around the lockdown. And so a lot of people try to buy the things. They're like, oh, I get a lot of comments saying like, oh, this Zoomer doesn't know shit. And I'm like, okay, it's a compliment, whatever. Except now I don't want to be thought of as a Zoomer either. So it's kind of sucks. But yeah, it's calderalab.com, and use my promo code FRY15 to get 15% at checkout. I use their stuff all the time. And otherwise, I do a lot of testing of whatever I buy, and if I like it, I make a decent video on it and try to tell people. But my channel, Von Jog Vlog, it's just like a catch-all of what interests me. If I want to slam LeBron James that day, that's what I'm going to talk about. I do a movie review or a game review, whatever is of interest to me. Algorithm does not like that. They want you to be very much on the anti-LeBron 5 times a week, twice a day sort of stuff, in order to get that algorithm. And I hate the way this site's gone, because if you guys have been around here as long as I had, where I started YouTube in very end of 2007. Things were way more creative. People were doing their comedy sketches. There was animation. There was all kinds of weird stuff instead of just chasing reaction videos. And that's what everything now comes down to when you really think about it. So much of what is on the site is now just reactions one way or another, and not really making anything, not saying anything important that anybody else isn't saying. It's just we have to have our reaction because that's what people are searching for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, I've gotten some traffic for talking about old school Michael Jordan things, but yeah, I agree with the reaction. The reaction seems to be the number one thing, and just hate fueled content. Whether it's some people like to categorize my channel as LeBron hate. I don't think so. I just say he's not the GOAT. I think, like you were saying, Vaughn, I think there's a case that he may be outside the top 10. I usually have him in the top 10 for me. But otherwise, yeah, a lot of it is, and then you got the Michael Jordan hater channels. If
I
you
didn't
want to
know there
call
was a
them
Michael
that.
Jordan hater category. There is such a thing. I guess it would be LeBron stands, right? Like that would
Is
have to kick down Jordan to prop him up, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, essentially. There's some people in here that will go and they say I'm a hater, but their whole channel is dedicated to talking about Michael Jordan every week and how LeBron's better than him. So it's the pot calling the kettle black, but I don't believe I tear LeBron James down. I credit him for the 40,000 points in the 21 years and all of that sort of stuff. So, somehow I've been put in that lump, but whatever.
There is an honorable way to go about making content. It's just the people that are making the big money and attracting the subscribers are not the ones doing it. They're making the same video every day of the week. I was watching Scap Attack. You've probably heard of him. He has the anti-LeBron stuff, but it's the same clip all the time. He doesn't actually have a lot of jokes, so he just cuts away to gags, clips from movies. It's such a cheap way to do it, and it works. The algorithm says, hey, it's the same thing. And that's the way, unfortunately, the site has gone, where you can watch a negative review of a Star Wars movie, and it's going to say, okay, the next thing you want to watch is a negative review of a Star Wars movie again and again and again, instead of, well, we've got that. Now, what else did that person give us? So it makes the algorithm is forcing people to make the same content every day of the week. And that sucks.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Vaughn, or Van? I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
It's Vaughn. In the email, you added an A and you mentioned an RJ, and I had to decrypt this email. Like, okay, I think, that's JR. I thought maybe he's talking about LeBron or something there. I wasn't sure. If we go much further, I'm going to totally expose my lack of knowledge of today's NBA. So we should probably wrap it up, because I don't think I can name anybody on the Celtics. So
yeah, I got you. But I want to thank you for coming on. I thought this was great. And it's an interesting story you brought up with the JR Gideons. And, I thought it was a good time. Do you have any sort of, I know that you do stand-up comedy as well, and you do your skits on your channel. Do you have anything upcoming anywhere that you want to talk about? Or
I'm posting, I got to do the shorts now. Are you guys doing the shorts on YouTube? Because they feed the views to the shorts now over on YouTube. So I do have a good short that I dreamt up when I woke up real early this morning to kind of prep for this, even though I was late getting everything set up. And I shot a short, and so I've got like a funny short coming up Monday. And as far as comedy stuff goes, I try to have at least something to kind of grin at in every video. But I was kind of like on the bench today for a show that I don't think's happening because of this tornado stuff. So there's that, of course. But hey, it was great meeting you guys and having me on the show. And it's not often that I get like a not so hostile thing. Usually it's like there's some kind of like secret. Aha! Don't you remember me? I was your first hate comment on that review of Hollow Knight, and now you're finally falling into my trap or something like this. There's always some kind of gotcha interview thing when people want to talk to me. So it's weird that this actually worked out.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I liked your takes and just the value of some humor added on here. And I want to thank you for coming on. Nick, do you have anything about to say to Vaughn or anything?
No, I enjoyed it. Yeah, had fun as always.
And you can check out NB Sports as well. Hoop God, have you returned or are you on the phone call of the century still? All right.
She must be really hot or really mad.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, thank you again, everybody. Thank you for the chat, all the haters, all the friends. Thank you, Adidas Zero and Pierre, for the super chats, and Adidas for being a member. If you want to be a member of the channel, you can be a Michael Jordan fan at the same cost as one Gatorade per month. So for anyone wants to join, you also get shout outs. And then also I put memes up in the member section sometimes. I want to do more of that. I've been super busy. For all you that know, I've only been able to do live streams lately because I have a computer that does not have the processing power to even make videos right now. So I have to do everything web-based.
Yeah.
But yeah, RC says just call him Phone God 23. But yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And Michael Jordan